Welcome to Cockeyed Optimist Radio Free Rock, the show where we learn, talk, and rock. This is episode 4, Dr. Fauci, the media, and the rise of COVID fascism. Speculate, separate the one you hate, circulate the lie you confiscate, assassinate and mutilate as the hounding media in hysteria. Who's the next for you to resurrect? JFK, expose the CIA. Truth be told, the grassy knows the blackmail story and all your glory slander. You say it's not a sword, but with your pen you torture men, you crucify the Lord. And you don't have to read it, and you don't have to eat it. To buy it is defeated. Then why do we keep fooling ourselves? Just because you read in a magazine or see it on a TV screen don't make it factual. Though everybody wants to read all about it, just because you read in a magazine or see it on a TV screen don't make it factual. Actual, you're not that intellectual. In the hood, frame him if you could. Shoot to kill, blame him if you will. If he dies, sympathize. Such false witnesses, damn self-righteousness. In the black, stab me in the back, in the face, to lie and shame erase. Heroin and Marilyn, the headline story of all your glory, it's slander. With the words you use, you're a parasite in black and white. Do anything for news, and you don't go and buy it, and they won't glorify it. To read it sanctifies it. Then why do we keep fooling ourselves? Just because you read in a magazine or see it on a TV screen don't make it factual. Though everybody wants to read all about it, just because you read in a magazine or see it on a TV screen don't make it factual. But everybody wants to believe all about it, just because you read on a social feed or see it on a Netflix stream don't make it factual. Just because you read in a magazine or see it on a TV screen don't make it factual. Actual, their lies are reprehensible. Parasite in black and white, do anything for news, and you don't go and buy it, and they won't glorify it. To read it sanctifies it. Then why do we keep fooling ourselves? Just because you read in a magazine or see it on a TV screen don't make it factual. Though everybody wants to read all about it, just because you read in a magazine or see it on a TV screen don't make it factual. But everybody wants to believe all about it, just because you read on your social feed or see it on a Netflix screen don't make it factual. Just because you read in a magazine or see it on a TV screen don't make it factual. Actual, you're so damn disrespectable. Hello, I'm Cinda.
I'm Sean. We're Cockeyed Optimist, and welcome to episode 4 of Radio Free Rock. Hard to believe we're at episode 4 because it feels like we just put out episode 3 2 days ago.
That's because the first couple episodes that we did last year, we were like, what are we doing with this show? And now that we know we're going to do it monthly, so that's why it feels so much closer together, because it actually was.
It also feels like it's so close because we've been sharing clips from episode 3, and some of y'all are not watching the full episodes, and you're just listening to those sound bites. So you're therefore proving a lot of the points that we make in this show. So in the interest of you actually watching the full episodes, we highly encourage you all to click the subscribe button, ring the notification bell, and come back every month for a brand new episode of Radio Free Rock.
And I did forget to mention, I missed a point.
Did you know?
So we are going to talk about Dr. Fauci.
Indeed.
We are going to talk about the media.
Yes.
But I left out that we're going to talk about predictive modeling.
My favorite part of the discussion.
Yeah, it sounds so blah and boring, and most people don't even know what that is. Well, maybe not most people, but it's not the most common of terms. So I forgot to mention that one in there before the envelope of the COVID fascism that we've all experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And the next episode is going to be a sort of part 2 of COVID.
So once again, I reiterate, click the subscribe button, follow wherever you are watching or listening to this show, because you will not want to miss part 2 of this. And since it's a 2-parter, we might as well just cut right to the chase and get down to the meat and potatoes of this week's episode and start talking about one Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Anthony blank.
Anthony Blanken Fauci. Once again, he's back in the news. I kind of thought we would be...
Guess who's back? Back again.
You know what? Shady can go away too, for all I care. So Fauci's back in the news again. Obviously,
Hold on. Doesn't it feel like 2020 has never ended?
Yes.
I don't know about where you live in the world, but in California, we often feel like, oh my gosh, is it still 2020?
Yeah. But obviously, he's back in the news again, testifying before the committee headed up by Senator Dr. Rand Paul. I think that's
also a medical doctor.
Yeah, I think that's a very important designation, because a lot of media, both the mainstream and alternative medias, are doing this exact same thing. I don't know why the alternative media outlets don't give Rand Paul his medical designation, especially because all those med school grads, are always on like, doctor.
But I think everyone can agree that the hearing was a show.
I would say 111 times over.
Fauci started with his statement and was basically, the gist of it was saying, well, I'm going to invoke my Fifth Amendment because I feel like this hearing is happening in bad faith. If he were acting in good faith, wouldn't his good faith be able to rise above it and be like, I believe Dr. Rand Paul is acting in bad faith, calling me to this hearing. But even though I think he's acting in bad faith, I am going to act in good faith and tell the truth, so help me God, as best as I can remember. That would be the actual good faith thing to do. The invoking the Fifth Amendment, if you don't want to incriminate yourself, fine, he can do that if he wants. But the invoking the Fifth Amendment over what day of the week, when Senator Hawley brought that up, or what color is your tie, or the color of the carpet, I severely doubt Senator Hawley was going to get in a debate over objectivity versus relativism, like, okay, the carpet in this room is a gray, dove gray blue versus a slate gray. I don't think that conversation would have occurred. So it was just proving he was acting in bad faith the entire time to not answer basic, simple, objective questions.
Yeah. And that really was, you could call the hearing a show all you want. At the end of the day, a show is comprised of a cast of players. I don't see how anybody can watch the way he approached that hearing and say he's still a hero. But yet
he certainly didn't play the role of the science.
No.
If you don't remember, he said, if you question me, you're questioning the science. Basically saying, you cannot question me because I am science. What kind of narcissistic framing is that?
So I think it would be a good idea if we took a step back and looked at Dr. Fauci's career prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, because there's a lot that happened beforehand with him that we weren't aware of, probably a lot of you watching and listening right now are not aware of either. But I think it could help paint a picture of who he became to the country during the pandemic, as well as who he is right now as the testifying 85-year-old man. So, one of the interesting aspects I found of Fauci's career is that most of his professional career has been in the quote-unquote public service, meaning he's been a government official. He graduated from Cornell University Medical College in 1966 and completed his internship in residency from 1966 to 1968. And it was
Where was his residency?
His residency was at New York Hospital at Cornell Medical Center. He joined the National Institutes of Health, NIH, in 1968. So pretty much upon the completion of his residency, he joined NIH.
So really, that means he probably never had any real patients other than his residency.
Possibly, but for a brief period of 2 years between 1970 and 1972, he did return to that hospital as the chief resident. I don't think it's any secret that a lot of the frustration that people across the political spectrum have with medical care is the fact that doctors just don't really spend enough time with patients. And the more that I look into this bio, it's kind of like, how much of his career did he actually spend at a bedside? He returned to NIH as the senior investigator in the Laboratory of Clinical Investigation in 1972, then was promoted to head of clinical physiology in 1974. In 1980, he's appointed chief of the newly established Lab of Immunoregulation, which he held until 22. And then from 1981 onward, he was involved in the AIDS epidemic. November 2nd, what year? 1984. He was appointed director of NIAID and held this position for 38 years. So that would have been during the Reagan years. But why is it always 1984? I want to get to the AIDS epidemic because this is really something that, as I started looking into it, there are certain parallels between the AIDS epidemic and the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, there was a lot of criticism from the gay community because those were some of the earliest infected with HIV about the response from NIH. Fauci also oversaw the approval of AZT as a treatment. The early recommended doses had such a high amount, and that led to some very, very severe side effects. Apparently, Freddie Mercury was on AZT for his HIV, and the reason that he wasted away as he did towards the end of his life was because of that high dosage and the toxicity of it. But you had major side effects like bone marrow suppression and anemia, gastrointestinal issues, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, neurologic and muscular issues, headache, insomnia. We also have enlarged red blood cells, fatigue, and there was even serious but rare mitochondrial toxicity.
This is basically the plot of Rent.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's so many people in Rent on AZT.
Mm-hmm.
AZT break.
Yeah.
Where it's, oh, I got to take this multiple times a day,
right.
You know?
Yeah.
Where something this immunosuppressive seems like you probably don't need to take it that many times a day.
Right. Like they were watching friends, they were, families were watching people they cared about taking this medication that was recommended to them for this infectious disease. And yet, as they're taking this medication, they are watching people waste away. And so they're getting mad. Interesting thing, though, about the response from NIH and Fauci, because he was the face of the government response to the AIDS epidemic, was curiously different than the COVID-19 pandemic.
So he didn't say, you cannot question me because I'm the science.
As a matter of fact, he went to meetings with people from the gay community, listened to their concerns, listen to their frustrations. It's just a very curiously different response overall. AZT had some trials and it showed some success, but obviously once gotten to the public, there's this high toxicity dose that ends up actually doing more harm than good. And we experience the approved medical treatments for COVID-19. We're seeing a lot of very toxic results because of that. But this response from Fauci in COVID-19, if you question me, you question the science. I am the science. That was his response. I don't understand how in a period of 40 years, we can go from someone who heard concerns about a new unknown disease, took the concerns in, and decided, I'm going to sit and I'm going to listen. How he didn't carry that lesson towards the later part of his career, I don't understand.
And I want to bring up one other pandemic that is an in-between pandemic.
Okay.
Ebola outbreak of the Democratic Republic of the Congo of 2018. Fauci, if you look, his fingerprints somehow end up everywhere. I don't understand. Like, did you know we were doing stuff in the Congo? I didn't know. But the drug remdesivir that was used in those clinical trials, there was 4 arms of the trial. The drug remdesivir was the most fatal one. And what drug did we put patients on during COVID-19 in the hospitals? Wait a minute. Yep. Ding, ding, ding. Remdesivir. The most fatal of 4 in Ebola. That's the one we used. Doesn't sound like a good idea.
No, it does not. But yeah, I think it's one of those things that if I had to put a button on Fauci's career, that's really the crux of my sort of frustration with it all. The response to one was completely different than the response to the other. And when you have people throughout your life telling you that you need to constantly learn lessons in life and carry them with you, it's like, well, I guess as you just get older, you start forgetting all those lessons that you learned and you just toss them out the window and say, screw it, I'm a curmudgeonly old man.
I feel like I was most bothered by the deification of Fauci. I saw literally, what are they called? Prayer candles?
Oh my God, they're still available on Amazon too.
We should put a screenshot of a prayer candle. They essentially sainted him. There's all kinds of merch. I saw bobbleheads. I saw socks. And it's like, oh my gosh. Watching Jennifer Garner and Matthew McConaughey doing little Zooms with him. They were like, Jennifer Garner seems so excited. Oh, I have Dr. Fauci and we're talking. And I'm just like, why are you talking to him? This doesn't make any sense. This is literally like connecting your celebrity to this doctor to, I don't know, give him celebrity cool points. Like, it was so bizarre.
Yeah.
And then the media just went, and he became the media darling.
He really did. I mean, he was on the news almost every day. There was a press briefing about the pandemic every single day at which he was speaking. It
was like there was characters. You had Fauci, like this sort of little Italian guy. You had Deborah Birx with the ascot. Like it was it was almost like a game of Clue. Like, who's our imagery person? What did they look like?
So if it was like a game of Clue, was Fauci Colonel Mustard?
No, he's not a colonel.
He'd be Professor Plum.
He'd be the professor.
Ah, yes, of course. Even in his own recently released personal diary, he talks about how he is at one point the most talked about and famous person.
Dear Diary, my teen angst bullshit has a body count.
And now for a short interlude where we actually read some of Dr. Fauci's diaries. And yes, his diary does have a body count. And actually even some little bit of teen angst that you would expect from a teen girl.
A little weird for a man nearing 80 at that point in his life.
From reading just the first few dozen pages, you can clearly see narcissistic tendencies, savior complexes, the desire to be famous and adored, and actually a smoking gun proving that he did lie to the American people.
I would say so. We're not going to read through everything. We're just going to read bits and pieces. On January 6, 2020, he writes, Chris and I went to a book party for our friend Ruth Marcus, Washington Post columnist.
Chris is his wife.
Yes. For her book, Supreme Ambition, about Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Super A-list at party.
You have already started to see Dr. Fauci's obsession with the idea of celebrity and A-listers.
And the funny thing is, when I read these names on this super A-list, they're all Washington, D.C. people. They're not real celebrities. The only name I recognize is Kellyanne Conway, and everybody hated her by that point and that time. So, whatever.
Actually, Fauci sort of says that he doesn't like her later on. I didn't really feel the need to highlight it.
Catty teen girl drama. Interesting. Did TV interview with Canadian TV on the viral outbreak in Wuhan, China. Did interview, print, with Health Day on the influenza season. Appeared on Voice of America, discussed the new Wuhan virus documented to be a novel coronavirus. So already we see him making notes on the appearances that he himself is making in media. I appeared this evening on a PBS NewsHour segment on Ebola with considerable exposure in the piece. Did print interview for Kaysen Media Company, which is the, quote, most influential political and business news organization in China. We get to the beginning of the body count. Novel coronavirus situation continues to evolve. Now 298 cases with 6 deaths.
Doesn't the same day that the body count starts, we start getting a press count?
Then we have other press today. VOA News, Wall Street Journal, WCBS Radio, Newsmax, Fox Business with Lou Dodd, Bloomberg Law, Washington Times, Time Magazine. That's all on January 21st, 2020. This man not only has a body count, he's also got an appearance count. I was supposed to be on this coming weekend. It is now Friday. This week with George Stephanopoulos and Face the Nation. However, these were bumped because of the impeachment trial that is going. He brings this up a couple times in these entries, that he gets bumped because the impeachment trial is going on at the same point in time. Kind of a little bummed that he doesn't get to add some of this to his
You can
repertoire.
tell he's very bummed.
He makes note that a CNN interview was canceled because of Kobe Bryant's death. Little weird that he feels the need to say that he was bumped because Kobe died. Got a call this morning from Lou Dobbs, who told me that President Trump will be calling me. Lou spoke with the POTUS and told him I was the, quote, smartest person around and should speak with me. This all followed by one short 3-word sentence. Amazing day today. Briefed the House members led by Nancy Pelosi, who was her usual self with me. Big hug, kiss, telling everyone how great I am. Little embarrassing.
Little embarrassing.
I
think he likes when Nancy Pelosi talks about him.
After about 1 hour, the president came in, and first thing he said to me, Anthony, you are a really famous guy. My good friend Lou Dobbs told me that you were the one of the smartest, knowledgeable, and outstanding persons he knows. He then stayed for 20 minutes and asked most of his questions of me. I was surprised and very pleased, and the deputies were clearly stunned and impressed. When Trump finally left, he said, Anthony, are we okay? I said, we are good. He smiled as he walked out of the room. He said, thanks again, Anthony. We're counting on you.
And that's where I feel the sociopathic tendencies coming through.
Well,
because it's only that other people are suffering that he's having amazing days.
Well, let's go ahead and read this nice sentence. All my friends kept saying I was a national hero, and they, quote, felt safe in my arms.
Whoa.
All caps, 3 exclamation points. Game on. Things are changing rapidly. Dr. Ma Xiaowei, the Chinese Minister of Health, gave a press statement saying that the incubation period of novel COVID is 1 to 14 days and that the virus is being transmitted when people are asymptomatic! Exclamation point. This has enormous implications for how we handle people from Wuhan. Should we quarantine them? I'm very skeptical about the Chinese interpretation of their data. I spoke with Mike Ryan, World Health Organization. He is very skeptical that asymptomatic spread is present, or at worst, is a major driver of spread. Mike Ulsterholm also feels this way. I spoke with Nancy Messonnier and Bob Redfield this morning to coordinate our responses.
He's actively saying we need an official narrative. We need a coordinated narrative because science cannot tolerate differences of opinions.
Later on in the entry, it now appears using epidemiological data and genomic data that the first infection was in early December and was not connected to the market.
So all of that long-term, oh, it came from a wet market and there was bats and pangolins and people in the market and all that, one of the first big lies.
Remember, early on, the Chinese were saying there is no human-to-human transmission, and all original 27 cases were from the market. Now we know the market was not the source. It was the amplifier.
Wow.
Big day at White House. Major discussions at deputies on how to handle the 200 U.S. citizens, diplomats and families and others who are being air evacuated from Wuhan. Concern about whether not to quarantine them for 14 days when we did not and do not quarantine Chinese who passed screening on entry. Marty Cetron had argued that the Americans were more recently in the hot zone, whereas the Chinese, which he spells as Chines, okay, the Chinese who are coming in now are not really coming from Wuhan, since Wuhan has been shut down by the Chinese. Also, political concern of what it looks like to quarantine or imprison U.S. citizen versus what happens if we let them in and they start infecting people.
He admits that quarantine is synonymous with imprisonment.
Yeah, very, very odd.
And isn't it interesting that the Chinese have more rights than Americans who had come home from China?
But I suppose if we do have an actual smoking gun, it comes on February 1st of 2020. A conference call takes place that day, and he proceeds to list all the participants. Quote, "There was not total agreement about the likelihood of deliberate insertion. Ron Fauci said he was sure that this could occur naturally, and we should not waste our time and divert effort to pursue this. This is expected of him since he was the original gain-of-function person. Also, Christian Drosten was with Ron. The rest felt that deliberate insertion was possible. And given that Dr. Zhang Li at the University of Wuhan has been working for years in gain-of-function in coronaviruses to allow adaptation of the spike protein to bind to the human ACE2 receptor, we could not let this go." Meaning the lab leak theory was being discussed amongst the expert class in February of 2020. And out of all participants on that call, only 1/4 of them said, "Nah, don't even think about that." Why? Because they're the gain-of-function people.
75% of them thought it could be gain-of-function. This could have came from a lab. This is not necessarily bats, pangolins, and wet markets.
There you go. The expert class was always doubting what they were saying to the cameras. Deliberate insertion. The lab leak theory. The market not being the source, but just being an amplifier. Eventually, we restrict the travel and we basically do what China did back in the beginning of January. And we have COVID.
It's clear from reading Dr. Fauci's diaries that he loved the attention. He loved becoming more famous, more recognizable. And like I sang at the beginning, he loved being in the magazines and on our TV screens. And that's not the only place we saw him.
One of the things that bothered me so much about the media in that time was as soon as I'd fire up YouTube to, just upload a video file to the channel, there were like 5 videos right there. And it was a continuously scrolling thing of COVID updates every single day, like right on the YouTube homepage. And I can't tell you how many times I, clicked the 3 dots and said, don't show, because I didn't want to get sucked into all of that fear and that negativity.
We don't even have cable.
Yeah, but I wanted to consume the things that I wanted to consume. And it was like, for me, it just felt like, well, the news never changes any day on this anyway. So why bother watching it? But every single day there's Fauci's face, like 5 thumbnails across. And so you're just constantly reminded of his presence and how it permeates everything. You could not escape it.
One of our friends said, my mom has a panic attack if she doesn't watch the daily COVID presser. I'm thinking,
that.
The daily COVID press conference is going to cause a panic attack.
Yeah.
We don't have cable. I've never had cable in my life. I remember growing up, I'd be listening to a CD in my TV with the
you had
CD
one of those TVs, awesome.
and VHS player, and my mom would just rudely just switch over to the news. I'm like, I'm listening to my CD here. Like, I don't enjoy watching or listening to the news. So regarding the media, I wanted to read something from Matthew Ehret's Clash of Two America, Volume 4, The Anglo-Venetian Roots of the Deep State. This is a quote in 1952 from Lord Bertrand Russell, who's in some of these weird secret societies.
They're always in a secret society.
There's so many ones that coalesce and overlap, so it's like, which ones all was he in? But I found this very interesting, and think about this. This is 1952. I think the subject which will be of most importance politically is mass psychology. Its importance has been enormously increased by the growth of modern methods of propaganda. Of these, the most influential is what is called education. Religion plays a part, though a diminishing one. The press, the cinema, and the radio play an increasing part. It may be hoped that in time, anybody will be able to persuade anybody of anything if he can catch the patient young and is provided by the state with money and equipment. He is saying that in time, you'll be able to convince anybody of anything.
Oddly predictive, is it not?
And how he says the press and the cinema. Well, what is our mainstream media other than a combination of those two?
Yeah.
And it reminds me of some of these clips where you see media outlets from all over the country saying the exact same thing.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and false
news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
And that, my friends, is Project Mockingbird happening right before your very eyes. A project that the CIA says has been stopped and disbanded, but it sure does seem like it's in full effect.
All those repetitions is kind of like a Pavlovian You teach someone what to think. If you repeat it enough times, then everyone believes it's true. And it kind of comes full circle with the other day, RFK on CNN with Dana Bash, and he actually says to her, "You're just parroting." What is a parrot? A thing that repeats. It repeats. You are just parroting what you've been told to say.
A parrot in and of itself does not have the capacity to learn to speak a language. It can only mimic.
And she's basically saying, well, this is my job. And he says, no, your job is to show a level of skepticism, or probably a more accurate term would be objectivity. Don't you remember when you were learning in English class or whatever, and they would have us write news stories? It was, you have who, what, when, where, why, how.
Nowhere in that grouping is how I feel.
The idea of the news we were taught was to be objective and just say what happened and not spin it. Mm-hmm. Not try to editorialize. Yeah. And somehow it seems like all of the news
has just become
an editorial. Yeah. It should just be one big opinion piece, always.
But what you read in the book right there really connects to what we're going to get into next, and that is the predictive models. I would go so far as to classify predictive models as nothing more than a utilitarian game of Dungeons and Dragons. All it really is it's utilizing human lives to paint data points and to stretch the data points into these crazy extremes. And there were several in the lead up to the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, that really started to raise some cackles. So we're going to look at 3. Which one are you going to start us out with?
I'm going to start with the lockstep scenario, which came from the Scenarios for the Future of Technology and International Development by the Rockefeller Foundation. Yes, a new member of our cast of characters. And the Global Business Network. This was published in May 2010.
By the way, we are reading from the original document. So you can go right now and find and read the very same document.
Their fictitious pandemic was supposed to be in 2012. The fact checkers, they're like, they fact checked this. This is not COVID-19. Well, I'm going to read, and I want you to think about, did that happen during COVID-19? Here we go. Lockstep. A world of tighter top-down government control and more authoritarian leadership with limited innovation and growing citizen pushback. In 2012, the pandemic that the world had been anticipating for years finally hit.
We were anticipating a pandemic. I anticipate a pandemic like I anticipate the next big earthquake for Southern California. I don't!
I love that they just assume we're all sitting around in fear waiting for the next shoe to drop, whatever it is. Even the most pandemic-prepared nations were quickly overwhelmed when the virus streaked around the world, infecting nearly 20% of the global population and killing 8 million in just 7 months, the majority of them healthy young adults. Now, those numbers we checked are not the numbers that came out in final COVID count. But I love that it's very scary. The pandemic also had a deadly effect on economies. International mobility of both people and goods screeched to a halt, debilitating industries like tourism and breaking global supply chains. I never even heard the term supply chains until COVID. Even locally, normally bustling shops and office buildings sat empty for months, devoid of both employees and customers.
Even though I read this before we did this show in preparation, hearing them again is still shocking.
Notice how these next couple sentences I'm going to read paints the United States bad and China as good.
Yeah, I know where you're going with this. I do.
The United States' initial policy of strongly discouraging citizens from flying proved deadly in its leniency, accelerating the spread of the virus not just within the U.S., but across borders. However, a few countries did fare better, China in particular. The Chinese government's quick imposition and enforcement of mandatory quarantine for all citizens, as well as its instant and near hermetic sealing off of all borders, saved millions of lives.
The one thing they left out, obviously, in China is the just forced killing of people's pets.
The cats.
And the dogs. They're killing the dogs. They're killing the cats of the people that live there.
The people that live there. Oh, man.
Oh, it's great that we can laugh about it now. Guess what? On the inside, we're dying.
Yeah. The mandatory quarantine for all citizens and the near hermetic sealing is like, that is exactly what happened.
I mean, we were literally watching videos of China spray down like the streets with disinfectant.
During the pandemic, national leaders around the world flexed their authority and imposed airtight rules and restrictions. Get ready. From the mandatory wearing of face masks to temperature checks at entries of communal spaces like train stations and supermarkets. Even after the pandemic faded, this more authoritarian control and oversight of citizens and their activities stuck and even intensified. At first, the notion of a more controlled world gained wide acceptance and approval. Citizens willingly gave up some of their sovereignty and their privacy to more paternalistic states in exchange for greater safety and stability. Was it Ben Franklin that said citizens who will give up a little bit of...
We'll give a little bit of freedom up for safety and security.
Deserve neither.
Yeah, I'm paraphrasing, obviously. But yeah, that, and we're seeing it even right now with the conversation about flock cameras being installed and the increasing use of things like AI and in the surveillance apparatus. Lockstep also has a section on using technology within it. The first one, scanners using advanced functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI, technology become the norm at airports and other public areas to detect abnormal behavior that may indicate antisocial intent. I got curious as to, I know MRI, but what is fMRI? fMRI is brain scanning. While it cannot read your thoughts, it reads the intake of oxygen that happens within the brain when there's brain activity. So essentially, what we've got here in Lockstep is pre-crime detection. We've got Minority Report here in Lockstep.
Minority Report's almost more analog because it has the little ball that goes down the tube.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
There were other downsides.
She can't even get through it.
Okay. This one kills me, and I had to restart because it's so funny, the term that they use. There were other downsides as the rise of virulent nationalism created new hazards. Spectators at the 2018 World Cup, for example, wore bulletproof vests that sported a patch of their national flag.
If we're at that point where people going to the World Cup are wearing bulletproof vests, I got a news flash for you. There's not gonna be a World Cup!
That may be one of the weirdest sentences I've ever read in my entire life. It's like, did you not scan everybody with the fMRIs
I had to go through more security at Dodger Stadium in 2003.
World Cup.
They won't even let you into a stadium without a clear bag. And it has to be the size of my journal. Like, if people are wearing bulletproof vests to a sporting event, the sporting event just isn't happening.
Oh my gosh, I have to calm down because it's it's funny as you're reading it because it's that dystopian, but it's so insane that you just can't even believe they put this in print. By 2025, people seem to be growing weary of so much top-down control and letting leaders and authorities make choices for them.
You're damn right we're weary.
But
you're damn right.
This whole thing, lockstep, was supposed to start in 2012. So it was like a 13-year plan automatically.
Yeah.
And it's just like, this new normal, or as I like to call it, the new abnormal, they're assuming that this stuff is going to last forever. It says, wherever national interests clashed with individual interests, there was conflict. You think?
You think?
The feeling lingered that, wait for it, that sooner or later, something would inevitably upset the neat order that the world's governments had worked so hard to establish. You know who else liked order?
Hitler.
So that's lockstep for you people.
And now for another predictive model, Event 201. Event 201 was a utilitarian game of Dungeons and Dragons. And I formulate this designation based off the official description of it. Event 201 was, quote, a high-level tabletop exercise held on October 18th, 2019 from 8:45 a.m. to 12:30 p.m.
It's a D&D campaign.
Yeah, it's a tabletop exercise. It included pre-made news broadcasts about the proposed pandemic that they were utilizing within the exercise. They created materials to put the participants into the world. They LARPed. Yeah, they LARPed. They did world building.
And souvenirs.
Yeah. Oh my God. How could we forget the souvenirs?
They gave out a plushie toy of a coronavirus. Hey, come, everybody, step right out. Up. Maybe you'll win our little microbe. Yay, it's a happy microbe.
This is a post from their official Twitter feed. It's not like we had to go digging for it, and we didn't have to create it. This is their verified Twitter account.
That's the level of sociopaths we're actually dealing with.
That they had to make it fun for themselves.
It's a toy. It's a game.
Yeah, it's a game.
And actually, the one Bloomberg journalist who posted about getting the plushie toy said something like, it's important that we play these germ games.
Quit playing games. Quit playing games with our lives. Playing games with our lives.
I should have done the repeat. Sorry.
You were the backup. It didn't work.
I'm the singer usually, and so I think I'm the lead.
That too. She's always got to be the center of attention, So yeah, it was a joint exercise. Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, the World Economic Forum. Interesting that they pop up again in this whole journey into madness. And then we have the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The interesting thing was that it was actually preceded by previous Johns Hopkins exercises in the idea of global infectious diseases taking over the population. We had the Dark Winter scenario, which was a bioterror attack that utilized smallpox. We had
bioterror and Dark Winter. It sounds like it's a video game.
It does. It actually really does. Or some really crappy movie. Anyway, Atlantic Storm. This was basically the same kind of scenario with bioterror, smallpox,
Hold on.
but it was.
I'm rewinding. I feel like I remember Biden saying, I don't know if it was 21, it would have been 21, or if it was 2020, we are headed into a dark winter.
I can't confirm
I'll
or
have to look that up.
Deny that. Hey, future Sean and Cinda, if you find a clip of Biden saying that right now, insert it here.
We're about to go into a dark winter, and he has no clear plan and there's no prospect.
So 201 centered around a novel zoonotic coronavirus that transferred from bats to pigs to humans.
Not pangolins?
No pangolins were involved in this one. No pangolins.
Dang it was pigs, not pangolins.
And they proposed a 18-month timeline for this proposed pandemic. And some little information about it is that they projected 65 million people would die from this pandemic. They projected that it would continue until the creation of a vaccine, or, interestingly enough, 80 to 90% of the population had been exposed.
So, herd immunity.
Exactly.
That they did believe in, and then they conveniently said wasn't a thing.
Exactly.
And then they realized, oh, it is a thing, and they had to walk that back again.
Yeah. One last interesting thing about this was some of the participants that were a part of Event 201, because it wasn't just medical things. There were financial, business in the sense of tourism business, and government officials as well. Marriott International and Lufthansa Group were participating in it. The United Nations was a part of this. The Chinese and the U.S. Centers for Disease Control. Columbia University also had representatives there, as well as Johnson & Johnson. So that, just to give you an idea of some of the cast of characters and the participants in this utilitarian game of Dungeons and Dragons. But I got curious, because a lot of these figures that I was finding with the parameters for Event 201 just seemed so extreme. I decided to compare the data between Event 201's proposed pandemic and what we experienced during the COVID-19 pandemic. Event 201 projected 65 million deaths in the 18-month timeline. COVID-19 to date, which I looked up the figure just yesterday to verify that it was as up to date as possible, we've totaled about 7.1 million deaths.
So that's like about 10%.
Yeah. And within Event 201, the proposed virus had a 10% fatality rate, while most studies can agree that COVID-19 had a 0.5 to 1% fatality rate, which obviously, given that we're looking at these death numbers, that kind of works out to that 10%.
What was the first day that China announced a novel coronavirus?
The first official public report of the pneumonia cluster later identified and caused by the novel coronavirus SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19, was December 31st, 2019.
So this is about a month and a half. I don't know what to say. The Chinese were there. I'm going to say that.
The Chinese were there.
The Chinese were at the Event 201.
Yeah.
And a month and a half later, conveniently, a virus that had to do with bats
and was a coronavirus.
And a coronavirus conveniently occurred.
And that, I think, is the thing that I want to speak into this. Johns Hopkins, in addition to the Rockefeller Foundation, had to, because of the public pressure, like normal people were not paying attention to this until the pandemic really got going here in the United States. But once people started looking at these scenarios and seeing that, like, these kind of things are too close to be coincidence. And even if they are a coincidence, which let's just say benefit of doubt, yeah, it's all just coincidence. This is so on the nose. It's like a teenager has a pimple right here, and it's just like, I got to pop it before the big dance tonight. It's just so obvious.
I don't feel like we have to give them a benefit of the doubt because they kept going.
That's true. They did keep going.
In 2020, if you haven't watched our last episode, episode 3, where we talk about the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab, you can watch it. We'll put a link. Our good buddy Klaus Schwab wrote a book called The Great Reset. I asked Grok to summarize it so I didn't have to put myself through reading it all.
Also, so we didn't have to pay money for a copy of that book. We're not giving him money.
Yeah, he doesn't deserve $1. So it says The Great Reset is a book-length argument that the pandemic created a rare, narrow window to fundamentally reshape economic, social, environmental, and technological systems. The authors frame the crisis not merely as a disruption, but as an accelerator of pre-existing trends and an opportunity to build back better towards greater resilience, equity, and sustainability.
Build back better. That sounds really familiar. Where did I hear that?
Build back better.
To build back better or whatever.
Build back better.
To build back better than before.
Remember the terrible damage of COVID as we try to build back from this global pandemic.
Build back better.
Building back better.
To do things differently. To build back better.
And build it back better.
It's my plan to build back better.
It's about building this country back better.
Some would say to build back better. We would say to really have a great reset.
It advocates moving beyond traditional shareholder-focused models and using the massive fiscal responses to the pandemic as a lever for long-term transformation aligned with goals like the UN Sustainable Development Goals that we also talked about in episode 3.
Maybe we should add a pin board with string to our show background.
Yeah, I know.
Jeez.
The massive fiscal response, so all that money printing, the COVID PPP money printing, that's what they're talking about. Oh yeah, they put us in a whole bunch more debt as a country, well, and as a world. Hey, that's great. We have this fiscal ability. Let's just blow money and do all this stuff. The COVID-19 pandemic represents a pivotal historical moment that can accelerate systemic change. Accelerationists. Most of the accelerationism is a destructive accelerationism.
But the phrase compresses timelines. The idea of compressing a timeline of something that is supposed to unfold to make the change happen quicker only leads to one logical outcome, and that's shock. And does the human being respond well to shock?
This summary even says, this perspective draws on the idea that never let a good crisis go to waste.
And that's a quote, by the way.
Companies serve a broader set of stakeholders, including employees, communities, suppliers, and the environment. This idea of stakeholder capitalism is saying, I own part of this company, even if I didn't do any work for it.
Yeah.
Companies would be evaluated not only on profits, but on contributions to societal well-being with incentives aligned accordingly. These are the ESG goals.
Yeah.
And it's like brownie points, gold stars, and it's using cancel culture to say, oh, your company's not good, so we're going to get everyone mad at your company, and they're going to cancel it, and you're going to lose profits because these people that we got all riled up, they're actually stakeholders. And it's like, I don't consider myself a stakeholder of this company of microphone or this camera. I bought it once, I use it, and that's that. I'm not expecting any more. I expect it to work, and that's that. And I'm fine with that relationship.
Proof of stake versus proof of work is something that we know in the crypto arena. Why is Bitcoin so much more valuable? Because it works off proof of work, because it takes more to do. We already have similar kind of ideas within companies that do like employee profit sharing. Employees work there and they put in time and effort to make the company successful, and thus they get a share of the profits that the company gains.
More inclusive distribution of gains.
Which is just another fancy way of saying redistribute wealth.
Yeah, it was actually talking about changes to wealth taxes. Mm-hmm. Which we are going through right now in California.
Yep.
They just did this in New York.
Yep.
So
alongside publishing a list of people's names and addresses.
That is like
so messed up.
That is literally...
That is so messed up.
Soviets.
Yeah.
That's Soviet level canceling and tracking and doxing. The book calls for a renewed social contract that provides stronger protections, progressive taxation. That's right, Marxism, people. Where it was actually talking about the social contract, I was like, did the book actually use that term? And the AI told me, yes, it did. And I said, did it define it? And it says, it's not given a formal philosophical definition, but used a contemporary sense to mean things like rights and responsibilities between citizens, businesses, and the state. Expectations around fairness, inclusion,
dignity and opportunity, intergenerational equity, social justice. They love buzzwords, people. That's really all these things always come down to. We have a whole bunch of nice sounding buzzwords that don't mean a whole bunch of stuff. So no, I have no social contract with anyone. I don't expect anyone to do or do not anything because as Yoda told us.
Do or do not. There is no try.
This one I found very funny. This book suggests the return of big government. And then they say, the authors emphasize that expanded government roles must be paired with accountability, efficiency, and avoidance of excessive bureaucracy or cronyism.
But you
you
can't have big government without excessive bureaucracy.
Totally.
Like, it's just...
I asked the AI to clarify how we could have big government and less bureaucracy. And this is what it said. The book stressed the need for this larger role to be exercised smartly and efficiently rather than through bloated, slow-moving bureaucracy. They actually like the bloat. They don't like that it's slow-moving. That's the key. Because slow-moving, people will start to notice, hey, what you're doing, you're subverting our rights as Americans. We don't like this. So they don't mind the bloat. They just say they mind it, but they don't like that it's slow.
But another thing in that very same point, more agile, data-driven, and technology-enabled governance.
Robots are governing us.
Well, not just robots governing us, but this is also another instance of where data and AI can be used for ill.
Yeah, I wanted to ask the AI if the book really talked about the mental health toll of the pandemic. And it says the authors do engage with the broader societal and individual consequences of lockdowns and isolations, such as increased anxiety, loneliness, and the mental health challenges that accompanied prolonged separation from normal social and work routines. These are framed as part of the need for personal adaptation, stronger community support, and societal systems that better protect well-being. Personal adaptation. It's your fault.
Yeah.
It's our fault. It's each of your faults that you didn't do that well mentally during the pandemic. Can't possibly be the result and their fault, the authoritarians who like to lockstep us down. No, it's not their fault. It's our fault. We need to adapt better.
And I want to push back on one thing with this point, where it said people will have to adapt to something like localism. I'm sorry, but localism sounds a whole lot like a smaller version of nationalism. It's interesting that the Great Reset decides to endorse such a small version of nationalism. But nationalism is bad. Localism's good. Nationalism, very bad. So to sum everything that we talked about up, obviously within the title of the episode is the rise of COVID fascism. The reality is everything that we've gone through today and everything that we've examined, that is the rise of COVID fascism. From the media's usage to deify a medical expert in a public health crisis.
Big brother.
The predictive modeling that essentially lays out potential interventions and measures to take during a public health crisis.
Using fear propaganda.
The method was all to the madness was already there. All that we needed was the tipping point to actually walk it out. And that's essentially what happened.
And how in lockstep it was talking about authoritarian governments.
A lot of that
Fascist governments are authoritarian.
Yeah. By nature, fascism is authoritarian, and we did experience that all over the world.
There's a quote from one of the cast of characters that we brought up in episode 3.
Gonna move the pin over here.
Henry Kissinger. Today, America would be outraged if UN troops entered Los Angeles to restore orders. Tomorrow, they will be grateful. This is especially true if they were told that there were an outside threat from beyond, whether real or promulgated, that threatened our very existence. It is then that all peoples of the world will plead to deliver them from this evil. This one thing every man fears is the unknown. When presented with this scenario, individual rights will be willingly relinquished for the guarantee of their well-being granted to them by the world government. As we brought up in the last episode, no. In America, we believe in rights granted by the Creator, the unalienable rights that no man can take away.
And with that, now we want to play a brand new song for you. The first time we've ever performed this in any public forum whatsoever.
This song is about the lockdowns, and it's not from my perspective. It is a character that is willing to accept all the mandates, willing to live in fear, and willing to live in a glass cage.
The song is called GlassCage, and we hope you enjoy it.
Time to pull the curtain back. Absent light, all things are black. The prism bends and colors change, but this glass cage remains. Filtered through this lens, I see the world without as it should be. Tinted rose and all agree they give us all we need. Traded independence, I've become helpless, hopelessly helpless. Curtains close as night falls down. I'm all alone but safe and sound. It's only right to live this way. So in this glass cage I'll stay. Friends want me to come outside, have some fun, the world is wide. They seem to think I've been enslaved, but I don't want to be saved. Traded in my intellect, I've become ignorant and arrogant. Fear is my comfort, worn as a blanket, a shelter to keep me from the truth. It's too hard to face it, so I won't embrace it. This glass cage keeps me away from you. It keeps me away from you. It keeps